No, well, I'm not. They're going to go through the slides.
Okay.
So I'll hand it to them. Put it on the. Can everyone hear me? Okay. All right. Okay. Uh, just waiting. Yeah, letting a few more people come in with some seats, and then Alon's helping fix some of the AV. Oh. All right, everyone. Well, welcome and thank you for coming here tonight. Again, thank you for joining us for this important conversation on flooding, resilience, and environmental justice. My name is Jaisal Shah. I'm the Deputy Director of Drainage for Precinct 1, the Office of Commissioner Rodney Ellis. I want to begin by saying how deeply personal this work is for me. I've worked in flood risk reduction and flood management for about 20 years now, and I have firsthand experience witnessing how flooding impacts some of our most vulnerable communities. Okay, let me right here. All right. When I worked up north in British Columbia, Canada, I had the responsibility of leading flood risk reduction efforts where we applied an equity framework prioritizing underserved communities and those on the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum. That approach stayed with me, and I realized this is exactly what we need here in Houston and what we need to improve upon. In Houston, my hometown. We live in one of the most flood-prone regions in the country, and we also have many socially vulnerable and historically disadvantaged communities, which disproportionately bear the brunt of flooding impacts. I'm grateful to Commissioner Ellis and his team for giving me the opportunity to help bring that perspective home, to focus flood and drainage engineering solutions based on equity, resilience, and environmental justice, making sure that no neighborhood is left behind. Tonight's conversation matters because the questions before us are urgent. How do we ensure the $2.5 billion from the flood bond delivers on its promise of equity? How do we address the systemic barriers that leave some communities unprotected? And how do we build resilience in a way that truly includes and empowers local voices? So we are honored to be guided tonight by two people who embody leadership on these issues. Our moderator, Sonny Messiah Giles of the Houston Defender, and our featured guest, Dr. Robert Bullard, the father of environmental justice. With that, I'd like to first introduce Sonny Messiah Giles. Sonny is the CEO and publisher of the Defender Network, Houston's leading Black information source. The network includes the Defender newspaper, the website, and social media platforms. She has been at the company's helm since 1981 when she purchased the newspaper at age 27. She received an undergraduate degree from the University of Houston and did postgraduate work at Texas Southern University and Rice University. Prior to purchasing the Defender, Sonny worked as a radio news reporter, a television talk show host, and an advertising account executive at the Houston Chronicle and Magic 102. Sonny is married to Jody Lee Giles, who works in commercial real estate. Together they have two sons, Jody and Clyde. Now I'd like to introduce, please welcome Sonny. The clicker's there if you need to advance it. Now I'd like to introduce Dr. Robert Bullard, often called the father of environmental justice. He's a pioneering scholar, advocate, and thought leader whose work has shaped national and global understandings of environmental racism and equity. He's the founding director of the Bullard Center for Environmental and Climate Justice at Texas Southern University, where his research and advocacy continue to inform policy and grassroots action. For more than 4 decades, Dr. Bullard has documented how hazardous waste facilities, polluting industries, and disaster risks disproportionately impact Black, Latino, Indigenous, and low-income neighborhoods, particularly in Houston and across the U.S. South. His first book was Invisible Houston, Black Experience in Boom and Bust. His groundbreaking book, Dumping in Dixie, Race, Class, and Environmental Quality, established environmental justice as a distinct field of study and advocacy. He has authored or co-authored 18 books, including The Quest for Environmental Justice, Race, Place, and Environmental Justice After Hurricane Katrina, and The Wrong Complexion for Protection. In 2020, he received the United Nations Champion of the Earth Lifetime Achievement Award, the highest environmental honor given by the UN. Dr. Bullard's decades of work continue to inspire activists, policymakers, and communities to demand equal protection from environmental harm and to build resilience against climate and flood risks. And I'd also like a personal anecdote. I did a minor in environmental studies, and one of the books I was assigned was one of Dr. Robert Bullard's books. So thank you. It's a pleasure to introduce you and get to meet you today. So with that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Robert Bullard.
That microphone come here?
It might be that one.
Yeah. Or are we sharing? I think one of them. Okay. We're sharing.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Is this on? I don't think so. On. Hello? Is that better? Got it? Okay. Everybody goes, yes, okay. Well, good evening, I should say. Thank you. And this is going to be a very interesting, informative, and educational experience because you got the man here, okay? Dr. Robert Bullard, as they've told you already, is the father of environmental justice, and this fireside chat today is going to be speaking directly to the challenges and opportunities facing Harris County Precinct 1 under the leadership of Commissioner Rodney Ellis. The conversation is going to take a heart-to-heart look at the issues, not just from the opportunities, but more so from the challenges and the shortcomings related to the 2018 $2.5 billion flood bond projects, the escalating impact of climate change, the growing concerns revealed by the urban heat maps that you may not know much about, but I've learned about, and I'm great and excited to hear about them, and also about the persistent dangers from the toxic waste facilities and cancer clusters that we've seen in the neighborhoods in Houston's 5th Ward. These aren't abstract challenges. They're lived realities that our communities are experiencing, that many of you in this room may be experiencing. And they're shaping the health, the safety, and the quality of life of countless families. So at the top of this environmental health burdens, our communities are also grappling with federal cuts.
Oh.
Can we talk? Okay.
Yes.
And this is a constant uphill battle for equity. I did not say equality. I said equity. Can I hear you repeat equity? Equity. Thank you. And yet, the truth remains that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And so with that, change happens when communities get organized, get loud, and get active. But before action can be effective, we must be rooted in facts, in data, and also clearly understand how the system works. So with that, and this important moment, Dr. Bullard has been in the trenches for 40 years. I've known him for quite a few of those years. Come a long way, brother, in pioneering the movement and equipping generations with the knowledge and strategies to push justice. Today, he's going to bring us a wealth of wisdom, experience, and empowerment to all of us so that we can understand the game but also learn how to win it. So with that, I welcome Dr. Robert Bullitt, who happens to be the kick-ass sociologist, as he's referred to, okay? He's the founding director of the Bullitt Center of Environmental and Climate Justice at Texas Southern University. Dr. Bullitt, my first question has to do with how do you define environmental justice, and what does it mean?
Environmental justice embraces the principle that all people and communities are entitled to equal protection of our environmental, housing, energy, health, transportation, basic human rights, civil rights laws. It's not rocket science, and it's not magic. And so the quest for environmental justice is basically a quest for equal protection and ensuring that all communities enjoy the good stuff and don't get more than their fair share of the bad stuff. Let me back up. First, I want to thank Commissioner Ellis for having this forum. And Sonny, I've known you for
A lot of years.
a lot of years. When you were 27.
Yeah,
and bought that paper.
Yeah, right.
At 27. I don't think I was thinking about buying anything. But I'm glad to be here and share some of the 40 plus years that I've worked. I've gone away and I came back. TSU gave me my first job, so
Yeah.
my grandmother always taught me to give back, and that's why I came back, to give back.
Okay. Next question I have is, and you're going to have to hold this microphone closer to your mouth in order for everybody to hear. Can I hear amen?
Okay.
Okay. With that, the question is, how did you get into this game? Because I think it's an interesting story about how you kind of fell into it, okay?
Yeah, I got drafted 2 times. I got drafted by the Army. I went to the Marine Corps. But I got drafted the second time. It was my wife, Linda McKeever Bullard, who's a lawyer. We came to Houston in 1976, right out of graduate school, and she was right out of law school. And 3 years later, in 1979, she came home one day and said, "Bob, I've just sued the state of Texas." I said, "You did what?" So technically, she sued my employer. She sued the city of Houston, Harris County, and the state of Texas because this company, I won't call any names, but the initials were BFI, wanted to put this landfill in the middle of this predominantly black middle-class suburban community. And when I say predominantly black, that's like me saying my family is predominantly black. Northwood Manor. And she said, I filed a lawsuit, and I have to go into court in 10 days to file this temporary restraining order. And I need somebody to do a study and get a map and put where all the landfills, incinerators, garbage dumps located, and who lives nearby. So I need to go into court. I said, "You need a sociologist." She says, "That's what you are, right?" So that's how I got drafted. And I had 10 students in my research methods class at TSU. And I told my students, I said, "Students, we have a research project. And when your professor tells you you have a research project in a research class, what do you got to do? You got to do the research." So I developed Linda developed the legal theory. My job was to do the study. There was no database, GIS, no Google, none of that. But I designed the study, and we tracked down all the data and put it in a map form, and the rest is history. I don't know if the results. You want me to get to the results?
Yes,
The results were
yes.
staggering.
Yeah.
I'm a sociologist, and my sub-area was demography. I work with maps and data. And what we found after we put all of the pins on the map and color-coded them with magic markers, magic markers. You can do it on a phone now. But less than 10% was, yellow was less than 10% minority. And then went all the way up to red was more than 50% black. And what we found is 5 out of 5 of the city-owned landfills, 6 out of 8 of the city-owned incinerators, and 3 out of 4 of the privately owned landfills in Houston were located in predominantly black neighborhoods. So from the 1930s up until 1978, 82% of all the garbage dumped in Houston was dumped on black people. We went to court. It was filed she filed a lawsuit on December 21st, 1979, on my birthday. And
It's my
yeah.
wedding anniversary.
So it was my birthday. And it went to court, went to trial in 1985. And it was first it was filed in court, only black female federal judge in the South, Gabrielle McDonald.
Right?
Remember that?
Yes, I remember.
And when it was getting ready to go to court, they took it out of that court and gave it to Judge Singleton, who was the senior judge. Man must have been 150 years old. He was calling us niggers. You niggers, be quiet. You niggers over there. I mean, yeah. And we lost the case, even with that data.
All the data.
All that data, the fact, the science, the data, but we didn't lose the whole idea of a legal theory of citing waste facilities and industrial facilities that follow the pattern of discriminatory land use patterns, and the data held out that this was not random. And so I kept going.
And what was interesting about him keeping going was back in those days when he talks about the magic marker, we had to take pictures of those magic marker maps, and it was really hard trying to get them to reproduce in the newspaper. So, you remember those,
I
right?
remember.
'Cause I was like, can we shoot this another way, or can you give me other dots or something? But it worked out.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit, Dr. Bullitt, about the historical and systemic roots of how all of this environmental justice is embedded in?
Yeah, I'm a sociologist and I'm an environmental sociologist. And I jokingly tell people I don't do dead white man sociology. I do what's called kick-ass sociology. That's patterned after one of my heroes, W.E.B. Du Bois, who was a sociologist, a kick-ass sociologist. He was a researcher, he was a writer. He did one of the first sociological studies, empirical studies, Philadelphia Negro, way back, in turn of the century. But anyways, if you look at land use, decision-making and policy, and how things get put in places oftentimes based on power, finance, and decision-making. And even in a city that doesn't have zoning, Houston, the only major city that doesn't have zoning, the pattern of targeting communities of color and placing those things that other people don't want is not random. And if you go back to the 30s, you have this policy called racial redlining. Racial redlining is a footprint that basically says that this community is going to get more than its fair share of the negative stuff. The dumps, the pollution, the highways going through, the flooding, that kind of thing. And they're going to get fewer of the things that make communities healthy. Parks, green space, flood protection, infrastructure that's going to make people healthy. And if you name it, I've written a book about it. I wrote a book in 1994 called Residential Apartheid, The American Legacy, University of California Press. And you can look at that book that was written in 94 and see today there's studies showing that racial redlining, that footprint that happened in the 30s, redline neighborhoods are more prone to flooding. They're more prone to have more polluting industries. They're more prone to have fewer parks and green space, tree canopy, tree cover. They're more prone to have fewer grocery stores and those other things, access to healthcare, health facilities. And more recently, we know that they're more likely to have a greater COVID infections, hospitalizations, and deaths because of pollution. And they're hotter. When people say it's hot as hell in the ghetto, it is. And
Literally.
ghettos are literally created by all of that. And so getting to the point of why is it that certain communities have more of the disamenities or more of the externalities, that's a big word like bad stuff, and fewer of the good stuff, it's not magic or rocket science. We can predict that now, and we can map that now, and we can show that how you track money and dollars to try to correct that. Our movement is more than just dealing with mapping and researching the bad stuff, who's getting all this. We also need to map, and we are mapping who's getting the good stuff. In some cases, that same map and that same policy that directs the good stuff to certain areas and away from other areas. And so our movement is to break that cycle of disparities and inequality, and making sure that all communities get their fair share of things that make us healthy, resilient, and sustainable.
I'm gonna act like church. Can I hear amen? With that, one of the things that you said, Dr. Bullitt, is that this is a marathon, not a sprint. And knowing that, what are the biggest barriers that the community has to face in achieving environmental justice and flood resilience?
Well, you know, you say it's a marathon, but I think there's a race. It's a race that doesn't exist. It's a marathon relay. I've been doing this for 46 years, and many people that I know that started out with me, I could count them on one hand in the 70s. A lot of them have burned out. A lot of them have given up. But it's like a marathon relay. We know there's no such race. You run 26.2 miles. And you pass the baton to the next generation to run, the next and the next. Today we have more and more young people, intergenerational folks who are trained, equipped to do the research, to do the science, to do the data, to do the facts, do the report, and form community-based partnerships with universities. The challenge is always resources. And the other challenge is that even our laws that we have on the books are not sufficient to get results. We have Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, Safe Drinking Water Act. We have Superfund laws. We have all kinds of laws, but we have FEMA. We may not have it next year this time, but anyway, the fact that in some cases, this whole idea that all communities are created equal is still an aspiration. Money follows money, money follows power, and in many cases, given who has the money and who has the power, it's not rocket science, or it's not difficult to predict where the most of the resources is going to go to make those communities better off. In Atlanta, where I lived, it was north-south. North of Interstate 20, that's the rich, more affluent, everything is make it healthy is there. South of Interstate 20, you get the things, all of the bad stuff. Divide Houston in half, Harris County in half, east side, west side. You can see the pattern of which communities are greener, cleaner, more resilient, more sustainable. Same city, same county, and you ask why. So that means that we have to bend that curve, bend that arc of justice to, in a way, that's our movement. Our environmental justice movement combines science, research, data, and facts with action. And the challenge is to make sure that we don't overload people so that they get burned out and give up. We need young people. We need young people. And I think that doesn't mean you have to kick us to the curb, because we got knowledge, we got experience. In some cases, organizations have resources. But the challenge is to make sure that we don't lose sight of the fact that all of it's connected. As was said, I've written 18 books. It's just one book. Don't tell anybody. But it's housing, transportation, energy, it's disaster, it's sustainability, it's health, it's all those things. And the challenge for our center is to build those partnerships with community-based organizations so that those partnerships are strong and outlive four-year elections. And a four-year plan is insufficient. We have to have a 40-year plan. I gave this talk in Washington, D.C., in New York City last week at the Climate Week. And I said the word for today is one word: endowment. We need our centers, our consortia, and our community-based organizations, our network, endowed so that we don't have to chase dollars every grant-making cycle, and that we have the monies that's sufficient to make the transformative change that's needed. And we have to fight like hell to get the money back. The federal dollars, tax dollars that we pay taxes that we earn. I know Harris County lost one of the solar for all, almost, what was it? 250 million. Well, we lost 156 million partnership with Clean Energy, Clean Energy Foundation of Texas. We also lost 60 million environmental grant makers. We ain't lost it, it's been canceled. We got good lawyers that are gonna fight to try to get it back. But in the meanwhile, we have to be creative and entrepreneurial in raising funds in different ways. And I think a lot of ways, again, is going after resources that are in our community that some of our graduates from HBCUs, for example, are millionaires and billionaires. We need to be tapping on them, some of our businesses, et cetera, to give back so that we have alternative streams of funding. That's the challenge that we have today, is to make sure that we have adequate funding and making sure that we have our young people engaged so they can carry on this struggle and this fight, whether you're in or out of college. Our young people starting, you know, in kindergarten, let them know that that they need to be fighting for clean air. Get up, stand up. You know, it's time for stop crawling. It's time for you to get up. You're 9 months old, pull up. I'm just joking. I'm recruiting young people now.
Okay, so that was his recruitment speech, y'all, okay. You know, you talked about some of the barriers, and you talked about what you're recommending as far as the money follows the power, and the need for the endowment, which is where the money is. The question that I have is that I've learned in talking to Dr. Bullitt and also to Giselle and some of the other policymakers here, is I needed to understand what was the strategy. What is it that I'm up against? How are they playing this game? And the two terms that hit the table were cost-benefit ratio strategy, which this is Sonny's interpretation and definition, so don't count this as the Bible, but the rich neighborhoods get the money first because their land is higher priced. The other part of the equation is equity framework, which is you put the money where the problem is the biggest. Now, with that, Harris County in 2018 voted to approve a $2.5 billion flood bond to finance more than 180 projects across the county. The bond was paired with the flood equity framework, championed by Commissioner Ellis and others, to ensure historically marginalized neighborhoods receiving priority attention in flood mitigation and recovery. Now, while the framework has influenced project prioritization, there remains debate, not a debate in my mind, but you're going to see the numbers, debate about whether these resources have been equitably allocated and whether community voices have been meaningfully included. I preface this statement. Could you explain to the audience how this cost-benefit ratio versus the equity framework is at the core of the challenge that we face?
Okay, this is not magic and it's not voodoo, but it is about economics and how economics can skew and bias who gets resources and who gets left behind. And if you're using, for example, something like the Stafford Act, which is after disasters, the federal government comes in, FEMA comes in and looks at the damage in homes and et cetera, and let's say theoretically the west side have high-priced homes and there's damage, east side has lower-priced homes. In many cases, they may have deficiencies in terms of the infrastructure of the homes, et cetera. Cost-benefit analysis, as you look at it, it says that if you have $800,000 homes on the west side, and there's damage, and it costs $200,000 to retrofit the home, to bring them back up to code and up to speed as to where they were before, those $800,000 homes are now worth $1 million. That $200,000 is only 25% of the $800,000. So, but if you got theoretically $80,000 homes on the east side, and there's $40,000 damage, that's half the price of the home. That, even though it's less money, those $80,000 homes are not gonna get a dime, no matter how good you fill out the form, et cetera. And so it's skewed toward the benefits or the investments or the return on investments, the ROI, return on investments, and on its face, it's neutral when you look at the lens to which it's applied, in terms of that lens is saying, well, this is not racial. It's not, race ain't got no, it's about the property value, et cetera. And so we fought, for years to get FEMA to change that and to apply an additional metric, a measure, and use, for example, social vulnerability index that was developed by the Center for Disease Control that looks at equity, looks at areas that have history of flooding, history of redlining neighborhoods, areas where they have not been able to get loans, improvements, et cetera. Infrastructure has not been in the best shape, and those areas have not, property values have not been able to appreciate at the same level. If you apply that equity lens, we're not saying throw out the cost benefit analysis, but using an additional lens, you'll get more of the east side homes to get the money. But there had been resistance for many, many years, and we were able to get that equity lens applied under the Biden administration, the last part, when the Inflation Reduction Act was being put in place, Justice 40. That equity lens, and that equity lens is nothing more than a lens that we developed and applied to saying resources should follow need, not money following money. It's like saying, well, I need a loan. Well, you got a collateral? You can get a lot of money if you got collateral. But if you ain't got a dime, you need it, you don't get nothing. What you gonna put up? So that's the essence of it. And so what we're saying is that when we went and testified in front of the Commissioner's Court in 2018, we said there needs to be a change in the way that money is spent and allocated, and projects are being built, and the bond would say, okay, we'll vote for this thing if you're gonna put this in. But the challenge is you can have a great law, if it's not followed, it's not worth a bucket of spit. But sorry.
No, that's real. Go ahead.
And so the challenge again is to have a tracking device that can look at the areas of need and projects that are coming along. But again, affluence, money, and power can also skew which projects are shovel ready. And we learned that on Obama when they were coming up with the money coming out to fix the economy. And there's a whole lot of shovel-ready projects that would skew where people have lawyers and they have scientists, they have all kinds of folks, and they have projects ready to rock and roll, ready to push the button. And a lot of our communities are still trying to figure out what's the criteria. So that's another skew, and I would suspect that there has something to do with if there's any inequities in terms of how monies and projects have moved forward. And the squeaky wheel always gets help. But you need more than squeak.
Yep.
In Greece, you also need to push
Pressure.
with power, and we should not be timid or shy about using our political power, because we didn't always have it. We also need experts. We need lawyers. We need folks who can do the analysis. We need GIS. We need all kinds of people in those rooms to do the studies and the reports, to show and put it on a graph and charts that it can't be argued with. It's hard to argue with a map and a chart. But you have to have emotion, but emotion alone won't get you nothing. That's what we have to do. And we have to be relentless. We have to be like the Terminator to keep coming back, and not give up on this. That's the key, that's the secret sauce of getting fair share.
So, if you notice, the data man said you have to know the facts. So with that, I have to compliment Commissioner Ellis for having strong policy people who were able to put together some facts and figures, because to me, talking heads is eh. But when you show me the facts and some data, then that puts a face on the picture, okay? With that, I'm gonna ask Jessel. Yeah, you're not gonna have me pushing these buttons, look.
All right.
Here
Alan,
you
might
go.
have to help
You
out
wanna
too.
take this microphone? Look.
Sure. You want to talk about the environmental justice slide first? You want to talk about the environmental justice piece, and then I can...
So what I asked them to do is to put together some of these slides so that you can understand some of the facts. Us talking about it is one thing, but when you see it and you hear it and you can visualize it, it makes a big difference on your retention. So with that, I want you to retain this information in order for you to act on this information. The floor is yours.
All right. You can do the first one, and I'll take it.
Okay, well, good evening, everybody. My name is Alan De Leon. I'm a policy advisor here at the Office of Commissioner Ellis, Harris County Precinct 1. One of my issue focuses is on environmental and climate policy. And so, just really quick here on the screen, you're going to see a lot of different slides, but at least here, we wanted to level set with some of the facts that Dr. Bullard was referencing to over, for example, Hurricane Harvey, which we know is one of the most impactful disasters that have affected the region in recent memory. And so, Hurricane Harvey caused $125 billion in damages. I think that's a figure that a lot of people are familiar with. But when we're talking about recovery and the inequities of recovery or resilience, of the people who, and a lot of this information is from different sources. It's from Kinder Institute, the Environmental Integrity Project, different surveys that have been done in the community. When people were applying for aid from FEMA to recover and restore their homes and livelihoods and et cetera, FEMA approved aid for 34% of white applicants, but just 13% for Black and 28% of Latino applicants. And as a follow-up to that, white residents in affluent Houston neighborhoods received $60,000 in FEMA relief after Harvey, while Black residents in low-income neighborhoods received just $84 on average. So when we're talking about the economic and racial disparities of relief, that's just an element, an aspect of that. 17% of all residents and even higher shares of Black 17% of all residents and even higher shares of Black residents at 31% and low-income residents at 20% said their quality of life was worse a year after Harvey. Houston initially received no federal recovery dollars. You might remember that from the news, where the money for our neighborhoods and our community was delayed. Houston initially received no federal Harvey recovery dollars, and when it did, Harris County only got 9% of $1 billion. Funds disproportionately went to wider, more inland counties. And we can talk about a lot of different facts, but I think these were some of the main ones. I mean, this is the work, again, that Dr. Bullard has really been working on and has been revealing his whole career. And so certainly after a year after Harvey in 2018, Harris County voters passed a $2.5 billion flood bond in an attempt to try to respond to the damages and to these inequities.
I think Dr. Bullard wanted to comment.
Yeah, what disasters exacerbate inequality. They make things worse. When money comes down from the federal government to our communities for recovery, if there's no concerted effort to change that pattern, that inequality will get reproduced over and over and over again. That's what those data show. There was a professor at Rice University did this study looking at these $10 billion severe weather events, and when money comes down to fix the problems and challenges, white communities end up wealthier by $126,000, and black communities and communities of color end up worse off, losing $23,000. So in this case, black communities are saying that they are worse off. That should not be. That should be recovery, even in communities that have been hit by these things. The other thing is that amount of money, there was $5 billion that was coming down from HUD for Harvard recovery. And the initial thing, the state was not supposed, the state of Texas, the General Land Office had designated Houston, Harris County not getting a nickel. But if you look at the disproportionate share of the damage, money should follow need. The damage was in Houston, Harris County, and they were spreading money off places. That's how Harris County was only get $1 billion, which is 9%, and I think Houston got $650 million. Understand, this was not 1920. This was recent. That's the pattern that we have to break when it comes to monies, when money's coming down, and who gets that money, and why so many dollars are that bypass our communities. That's the challenge.
Thank you. So we spoke about this a bit earlier, the key differences between the cost-benefit ratio approach and the equity framework. So again, CBR prioritizes wealthier areas and it undervalues benefits to vulnerable communities and doesn't really look at social and resilience outcomes. Versus the equity framework, you know, it prioritizes underserved and flood-prone areas, especially addressing historic underinvestment, and it incorporates social health and resiliency outcomes. The challenges with it are, how do you quantify it? You know, we live in a world of metrics and quantification. What's the added dollar benefit of, you know, putting in parks and reducing the urban heat island effect and having that green space in these communities that traditionally didn't have green space? But it's difficult to quantify the financial benefits of that, but they have huge financial, social, and health benefits. So that's an area that I want to get just better versed on, so that when we're looking for grants or we're, you know, updating a new equity framework, we can include these metrics in there so that we don't keep repeating similar patterns.
I'm gonna be proper soil. There are ways that we can quantify. There are tools that quantify benefits. For example, there's studies show the health benefits of tree canopy, parks and green space, living near a park. Houses that are located near a park, there's an equity accelerator. In other words, if you're living near a park, your home is worth more than if you are distanced from a park or a trail or nature. Those are the economic benefits. The health benefits of parks and green space also has been shown in terms of the data. Communities that have more green space and parks, walk trails, nature trails, they're healthier. And so there are benefits that you can quantify of having those amenities. Some people say they are intangible. If you live in a white middle-class neighborhood, it's not an amenity. That's a necessity that you know. Grocery store. In our community, say, "Oh, we need a grocery store." It's not an amenity. People take it for granted. So I think those things can be quantified and showing health and well-being. Well-being is one of those. I'm satisfied. I like my community. I love my community, and you can measure well-being in terms of the community solidarity, in terms of the extent to which residents themselves are involved in civic responsibility, et cetera. And those are things that they're soft, but they're very important. Yeah, I had to say that as a sociologist.
Yeah. Oh, and that was really good to hear that, because I'm going to be calling you as we develop, as we update and modernize this equity framework. So that will be really a good tool to have. This is one of the motions that, or one of the initiatives that Commissioner Rodney Ellis and a lot of the other commissioners led was creating a dashboard about the flood bond program. And now it is live on the Harris County Flood Control District website. I was going to do a bit of a show and tell about how to use this. Maybe we can do that another time or create like an online video tutorial. Alon, is that possible?
Yes.
Okay. But essentially, you go to the website, you click on for the 2018 flood bond, and this map pops up, along with some other data that's above and below, but we just grabbed this screenshot. But here you can see all the projects that are a part of the bond program, where they're located. You can click on the dots, it'll zoom in, it'll tell you what the project is, what phase it's in, and the precinct as well. This is a living document. There'll be continuous improvement. Some of the things I want to see is, okay, what are the dollars spent on the project? What are, the timelines? When will these projects be completed? How much is left to be spent? So some of those types of details are really important. And then even being able to filter out by your precinct or where you live.
Yeah.
So they do have a nice feature in the top left. You can put your address in, and it can show you any of the flood risk reduction projects that are going around close by to you. So it's really, it's a great step forward, but there still is obvious room for improvement. And if any of you tonight or whenever look at this and you see, oh, I kind of want this information, or this is quite difficult, please let us know, because we will be putting a lot of these issues towards the flood control district to help implement and make this better. And here is a QR code to get to that website. And if you don't have a phone, then you want to write down the website down there, and that's where you can get it from.
Very good.
A few minutes.
And the whole idea of this is to make sure that you all have access to the facts. Because often you complain and you know there's a problem, but you don't know how to contextually put it in words. This gives you the power of knowledge to be able to discuss the issues.
Yeah. And then from there, we were able to put together some data. I'd like to thank Will and Catherine for helping put a lot of this. Without their support and help, it's a bit of a task, but we were able to. This first slide talks about the bond projects that were paused, and because additional money is needed, including contingency. And also, they were paused because the priority was on quartile 1 projects per the 2022 prioritization framework. So in order to get those done, we had to pause several projects. And as you can see, most of these projects are in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th quartiles. And if you look at it by breakdown, Precinct 1, there were 3 paused projects. To complete all of these paused projects, it's approximately $450 million, and that includes the contingency component. Here's a visual.
Can I make a point?
Of course.
Go back.
Yeah, yes.
Look at number 3, and then look at the funds. I just want to make that point. Keep going.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
So I'll just go down the slide. So Precinct 1, there's 3 paused projects. To complete all of those projects, it's an additional $34 million. Precinct 2 is 5 paused projects. To complete those is another $83 million. Precinct 3 has 7 paused projects. To complete those would be another $202 million that needs to be found. Precinct 4 has 3 paused projects for about 17.5 million. And then there's several projects that span multiple precincts. So projects spanning precincts 1 and 2, there's 3 of them, for it needs additional 30 million. Projects spanning precincts 1 and 3, it's 1 project needing another 30 million, and 1 and 4 precincts, 1 paused project for 34 million, and across precincts 3 and 4, there's 3 paused projects, needs about another 22 million. And here's a visual representation by graph. So as you can see, most of the paused projects are in precinct 3. So there's 7 of them. So what that's saying is that, okay, well, we need to follow the prioritization framework. Many of, precinct 3, most of that is fairly affluent. So
It's 3 Ramsey?
3 is Ramsey,
Right,
Commissioner Ramsey.
right.
So by following the prioritization framework, we were able to determine, all right, well, we need to fund the most important projects going forward. And these are the ones we need to pause. Then there were projects where, okay, there were no added benefits, or the study showed it doesn't really make sense to continue with this. And there were 15 of those projects spanning across all the precincts. And again, almost none of them are in quartile 1. The only one in quartile 1 is, it's in precinct 3. So, this just shows like, okay, what's no longer being pursued. And then the next slide shows, these are all of the completed projects, and our most current data was as of May 2025. Billy, this is a long table, but I'll just give you the Cliff Notes version. There's 203 total completed projects as part of the flood bond program, and the total spent, and that includes partnership dollars, is $811 million. And I'll just focus on precinct 1. So precinct 1, 31 projects were completed, and approximately 160 million was spent. Now, this table is a bit, it's a lot of numbers. I thought, okay, let's put this in a graphic format. This way you can see that we are, precinct 1, doesn't have the most projects, has 31, but has the most spending, 160 million. And as you go down, precinct 2, 44 projects, about 130 million. Precinct 3, 31 projects, around 100 million. Precinct 4, 20 projects at around 60 million. And then it varies after that in terms of projects and spend. And so this is what's been happening, right? And because we decided to follow the prioritization framework, what was going to happen is that there most likely would have been an equal distribution amongst the precincts, but because it was brought to the attention of flood control that, hey, what's going on? You need to follow this prioritization framework that we passed in court in 2023, what's going on? So it caused them to pause and refocus so that we're not looking at it as a precinct boundary level, because flooding doesn't know precinct boundaries. Flooding doesn't know politics. So this is, and hopefully, as we continue, we will see this show that, we are prioritizing.
You can stop there.
Okay, stop here, okay.
Okay. So, yeah. Okay. So the reason I had him stop there is because now you have been able to see the completed project. I think that, and I'm not one to blow hot air on people's you-know-what. So, but one of the things that became very apparent with these numbers, because I have lived in Houston for a long time, is that this is the first time I've seen us be victorious as far as precinct 1 getting more of the dollars than some of the other precincts. Now, I think that's a testament to one, Rodney bringing up this whole equity framework strategy that thanks to Dr. Bullard, he even knows what it is and it's reinforced by his data. But now it's time to keep the pressure on because we are now going into another phase. As Giselle said, in the past, you would have seen a line where everybody would have gotten an equal share of the dollars, even though they didn't have equal need. So with that, I wanted to make sure you got the point of what this is saying. Now, we're in a different phase now. Almost all of the commissioners have admitted that the $2.5 billion in flood bond was never enough money. I repeat, never enough money. Question, Dr. Bullard. Do you believe that Harris County's flood bond has met its goal of reducing flooding in marginalized communities? And in what way has the flood control district applied or fallen short in applying the flood equity framework as intended?
Well, let me just say that I think I agree with commissioners. It was 2.5 billion was never enough, but it got passed, and I do think that implementing a new framework and changing the old system, in some cases, is difficult for some people to accept that lens, that new equity lens. Whereas, let's divide everything up straight up. Well, we know history of infrastructure, and some areas are more prone to flooding, and some areas have not gotten the basic infrastructure in place. To divide it equal is to continue the inequity. I think when you start digging deeper into the numbers, I would suspect that there will be some improvements in trying to correct some of the historic patterns of inequity, but I don't think we've achieved the total eradication of systems that still get skewed toward more affluent. And the challenge is, how do we keep going as we start coming up with solutions of coming up with that 450 million shortfall? How's that going to get distributed, and which projects will stay alive and which one will get pushed off onto the floor? Changing, making transformative change and putting a theoretical framework into action with all of the political dynamics and the horse trading, it's difficult. That's why I never wanted to be a politician or elected officer. I like being a professor. But I think we have work to do, and I don't think it's an impossible task. I'm optimistic that it can get done if there's a will and a commitment to address the continued inequities that exist within those areas that have not gotten a fair share of projects implemented before the money runs out. That's my non-committal answer.
So what are some suggestions then that you would give local leadership to help hold the lawmakers' feet to the fire and ensure that residents get the benefit?
Well, this is what I think. I think we have to look at the bond money and look at all the money coming through to address the inequities that exist across the county, whether it's housing money, or whether it's transportation money, or monies to deal with other kinds of infrastructure. Apply the equity lens to all of that, and not just this bond money. And we were beginning to do that as we started to get monies coming in from, you know, the bipartisan infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act. But there's been, you know, some changes made. Elections matter. But at the same time, I do think that having the Commissioners Court committed to this justice and equity framework going forward should make a difference, because when you talk about addressing flooding, flood mitigation infrastructure projects, you can address and correct the flooding and still have other problems that may have been exacerbated by the flooding, in terms of improving the streets, the sewer water systems, wastewater, parks, green space, all the green infrastructure stuff. And especially when we talk about dealing with climate impacts, and having being prepared for heat, as well as cold, and energy insecurity, and looking at these are all infrastructure issues that are I think the county has to deal with, as well as the city, in terms of how do we make sure that when we start building and we start talking about trying to retrofit and build out infrastructure for resilience, that we make sure that the grid and the community centers and the resilience hubs and how we get our homeowners and residents who rent into units where there's renewable energy, all of that for us is part of our equity lens, to ensure that the people who are getting all of the benefits from clean energy are not just the folks who have the money to affordability. That has to be thought through, and again, that's a challenge that we face today, because having all those things that we just talked about makes for good health. You know, good housing and schools, infrastructure, all of that.
We're gonna move a little bit away from flooding and look at the heat map, which is the next, and I'm gonna ask you to talk a little bit more about, I worked on park boards for years, and my whole focus was improving the quality of life so that you could exercise, so that you could just go out and breathe clean air, so that you could walk on the trails, so you could do some of the extra things, like get rid of the dumps, get rid of the dilapidated houses. But I learned from Dr. Bullock about heat maps. And I'm gonna have him explain it to you, because it's not rocket science, as he says, but it has a lot to do with the quality of health we have in our marginalized neighborhoods.
Well, you know, it's not complicated. More affluent areas have more trees. As a matter of fact, affluent areas have 50% more trees than poor areas. And if you talk about green, parks, green space, green canopy, trees provide a lot of good benefits, and it's cooler in areas where there's trees, green canopies, community gardens, all that stuff. And it's hotter in areas where there's those things are not there. In many cases, our neighborhoods, I mean, it's a fancy name. An urban heat island is nothing more than areas that lack tree cover, green canopy, and in some cases, it may be 10 to 15 degrees hotter. You know, if it's 90 degrees out in the area where there are trees, it may be 105 in other areas. And if you map that, you can see urban heat islands also follow the same pattern as the flooding. The red line neighborhoods historically are also the same neighborhoods where the infrastructure has not been put in place in terms of trees and green space and all of that. And so if you talk about your electric bill, being in an area where it's hotter, that means in lower income areas and low wealth communities where there's urban heat islands, they're paying more for energy. So it's hotter, you're burning more energy, and if you add heat, urban heat islands and pollution, that's a double whammy of bad health outcomes for pregnant women. And so you got health, you got energy insecurity, not having enough money, and then you got the problem of heat stroke or problems for the very young and the elderly. So addressing heat using green infrastructure, planting more trees and greening up an area, and there was monies for that. It was $60 billion for environmental justice, $60 billion for clean energy, infrastructure, et cetera. And so that means that we have to start addressing that with resources, and it's the same map: the flooding map, the urban heat island map, the food desert map, the nature-deprived community map. 73% of people of color live in nature-deprived areas, compared to 23% of whites. So it means that nature-deprived is nothing more than a fancy way of saying we don't have no nature in our neighborhood. In other words, and there are health benefits for having nature trails and being outside, especially for children. It calms them down, and for adults, walk in the park, mind, body, soul. And so there are benefits for having this green infrastructure and reducing these urban heat islands. And with climate change increasing not just heat, but also heat plus humidity. Heat is the number one weather killer, not flooding, not tornado, it's heat.
Great. I hope you learned some things from that, because it exposed me to some facts that I did not connect certain dots, and this connects the dots. Now, the word was money. Okay, so the question becomes, with the executive orders that the federal government has brought down, cutting the funding as it relates to environmental justice, equity and funding for communities, HBCU research, FEMA, I'm gonna roll all of it in one big bucket, okay? How devastating is this? And how do we fill in the gaps?
I just left New York Climate Week, and I gave a talk with the Forbes Sustainability Summit, and I got that same question. I'm a sociologist, but I know a little bit about history. I was there when it was being made. Our environmental and climate justice movement was not birthed inside of government, nor was it funded by government. And the idea that somehow government taking monies away from projects, programs will somehow stop a movement, that's not the case. I started this work in 1979 when Jimmy Carter was president. I've done this work under 9 presidents. And the issues come in, the issue of what gets funded, what doesn't get funded. When President Clinton signed the executive order 12898 on environmental justice in 1994, I was in the Oval Office when he signed it. There was no money for the executive order. When President Biden signed the executive order on environmental justice on day before Earth Day in 2022, I think it was 22 or 23, whenever it was, there was $60 billion for environmental justice and $60 billion for clean energy transition. That money has been frozen or canceled, but it has not canceled our movement. It has not canceled the work. In our HBCUs, I'm going to give a plug for HBCU. You know, our HBCUs were the first environmental justice centers. There were 5 of them. I left the University of California and came to Clark Atlanta University, my alma mater. Dr. Beverly Wright left Wake Forest and went back to Xavier. And there were 5 centers at universities all across this country, all 5 of them with the HBCU. For a decade, from the early 90s up until 2005, something like that, we carried the movement. Clark Atlanta University Environmental Justice Resource Center that I started in 94. Dr. Beverly Wright started Deep South Center in 92. There was a center at Hampton, center at Florida A&M University, and a center at Texas Southern University and Thurgood Marshall School of Law. These 5 centers laid the research foundation. We set up a model, community university partnership models, community-based participatory research before it had a name, research to action. We're not gonna stop doing this work. Our community university partnership, and I see a lot of our community partners in the audience. I have students that I was supposed to be teaching the class tonight. They're sitting right in here. So we will continue, and there are foundations that are called on a Zoom call. We get $5 million, $4 million. One funder gave us $5 million worth of stock, Amazon stock, which was better than money. Huh? So understand that there are resources that we know we can't match dollar for dollar what we lost from the government, but we still have opportunities to do this work we call gap funding. You know, you're on a train and they say, mind the gap. When I was in England, and I saw that thing and it said, mind the gap. I didn't know what you're talking about. But I do know it means watch your step, take care, fill in. We are filling in the gap for and raising monies that can support our community partners, because we don't want them to go under when we get the money back. And so that's what we're saying. We have not given up. We are full steam ahead working on justice, because as I said, 4-year plan won't get it. We need a 40-year plan. And our plan is to continue to do this work where there's a need, and there's a definite need now. When you talk about eliminating FEMA, closing down NOAA, letting satellites, climate satellites, spin into the Earth's atmosphere and burn up. So we say no to that. We say yes to science, research, data, and facts, but that's not sufficient. We must marry that, what we call action. That's our movement.
So when you say marry with action, I started this conversation by saying change happens when communities get organized, get loud, and get active. But before action can be effective, it must be rooted in facts, data, and a clear understanding of how the system works. What should the community participation look like now that we see what the wall looks like that we're up against?
Well, I tell people I am a boomer, proud of it, still fighting, still standing. Vietnam era Marine Corps vet, hoorah. But boomers, you look at the Zoomers, Gen X, Y, Z, you outnumber my generation. But together, we are the majority. We should act like it. What we have to do is to build strong alliances and working with communities, taking the lead. There's a lot of knowledge in communities, and that knowledge and that action and the I guess the energy of young people can be harnessed. Voting, being active, understanding, getting more information, doing your homework, getting the facts, organizing, mobilizing. There is no substitute for organizing. And you just can't organize on the phone. You just can't do it virtual. There's no substitute for in person. Zoom is great, but being in the room is better. And I think if we understand that this is a fight for our lives and a fight for our community. I work with some of them little old grandmothers in tennis shoes, take no prisoner, tough as nails, and they are fighting for their family, home, community. Now that's a fight. That's a fight, and it's a fight worth fighting. Now that's what I take away. That's your takeaway.
So at this point, I think you know, the power is in the people.
Yes.
I'm almost tempted to say power to the people. With that, we're gonna open this up for questions. And I want to, was there any question that I didn't cover that you thought I needed to hit?
No, you did a good job.
Okay, all righty. With that, do we have questions in the audience? Because you know I can always keep going. Okay. Yeah, there is a call to action. We can hit the call to action. Now, all of you are sitting in here listening, absorbing this data and information. You have been empowered with the impact it's having on the community. You have the data as far as what the money spend is, and this is streaming and will be available via video. Where, I'm not sure, I will ask somebody. But the point being is that now the next step is for you to take this to your communities, but also look at this list of action items. Giselle, you want to do this, or you want me to turn it?
No, I can,
Okay, good.
it's up to you.
Okay, here.
Yeah, so, you know, I guess saying the old cliche, knowledge is power, well, it is for flooding, especially with the flood bond. So review the bond dashboard, see what's happening in your area, in your community. If you have any questions about anything, particularly projects in Precinct 1, feel free to reach out to Precinct 1. But if you have specific projects regarding flood control, Myron Jones is the Precinct 1 coordinator, and his contact info is there as well.
Take a picture.
We'd also like you, every quarter, flood control is going to put out a quarterly report. So take a look at that. Again, if you have any questions or if there's opportunities for improvement, don't hesitate to reach out. Attend and contribute to flood control community meetings. You know, they'll be on their website whenever the meetings are. And even, you know, coming to Commissioner's Court is, you know, really valuable to contribute to equity and flood risk reduction. And again, as I've said before, reach out to us or flood control with any questions or feedback. So these are some simple things to do, and I will try and maybe get a tutorial on the bond dashboard so that it can be something easy to follow.
Yeah.
With that,
Very
do we
good.
have questions? I think we had several questions. Do we need to pass the microphone around?
Yes.
Okay. You gonna be Vanna? Okay.
Hi everyone, I'm Steph. Dr. Blair, you talked about how you have been through 9 presidencies, presidential candidates, and how you have faced things like this before. Have you ever faced attacks on the environmental justice community as we are facing right now? And if you could just talk a little bit about that. I mean, speaking for myself, it feels like this year we have getting our behind booked with like executive orders and different laws, especially targeting Hispanic and Latino communities. So I just want to, how do you get out of that, and how do you avoid burnout?
Hey, we gotta pass that back to the dump. Remember the dump?
Yeah. Well, you know, you can't be timid or shy or cowardly to do this work. I've had slap suits, you know, in doing the case against the company. There were threats. This is 1979, 88, up to 85. One of the gentlemen asked me, you know, it was about garbage. It's about garbage. That a threat was, do you know the last place they saw Jimmy Hoffa? Now, some of you don't know. Yeah, Jimmy Hoffa was president of Teamsters. And the last place they saw him was at a garbage dump. Anyway, yeah, it comes with the territory. And again, this is hard work. And it's not for everybody. But if you want to do it, it's very rewarding work. You get offer people trying to bribe you. You have to say no. When I left the University of California and went to Atlanta, there were 2 companies that tried to offer me a couple of $1 million to start a center, you know, Environmental Justice Resource Center. This is 1994, and I said no. well, you can take this, but no. So yeah, it comes in different flavors. And so you have to be strong and continue the work. And not let that, and of course you have to be self-aware. And yeah.
Next question. I have a question. Go ahead, girlfriend.
I don't think I need a microphone.
Yeah, you do. They want to get you on the thing.
Yeah.
I'm not loud enough. I thought I was pretty loud.
You are, but it's still
Well-
needed.
First of all, thank you, Dr. Booth, for being here. Thank you, Commissioner Ellis, who's not here, for putting this on, because it's absolutely necessary. I have a slight advantage because I happen to be an environmental toxicologist. So,
Yes.
I kind of have a little bit of knowledge about these, and you may not answer this question right away, Dr. Bullard, but I just want to put this in the atmosphere. What is it that we should be doing to shift the trajectory or the lens or the view of the individuals who are impacted by these things? Because a lot of times, we are the perpetrators of the lack thereof, ensuring that we have environmental justice, because we don't understand the significance of what this trash looks like, or what this clean water looks like, or this clean air, or this rock crushing facility, and those sorts of things that are in our neighborhoods that we don't understand how it's going to affect us in the long run. So what is it that we should be doing to shift the lens of the individuals in the neighborhoods and communities so that we can collectively understand how this affects us in the long run?
Yes. Very good question. And what we have today, as I said, our community university partnerships. And the Bullitt Center has partnerships with folks in Sunnyside, Cashmere Garden, Fifth Ward, Pleasantville, and going all the way across to the Gulf Coast, in New Orleans, Gulfport, Mobile, Pensacola, where we have done trainings with what's coming out of the smokestack, what kinds of facilities, what's the impact, and they call it citizen science. And we do these trainings and do these convenings, and these community leaders know as much, and in many cases more, than the experts, because they're living at 24/7. And they're able to go into these meetings, testify at these hearings, and to speak for themselves. The first principle of environmental justice is that people who are most impacted by these environmental challenges must speak for themselves and must have the resources to go in those rooms and speak with authority. That's our job, is to assist to collect the data. And it's not just us collecting the data. The community university partnerships also have the community-based participatory research that we have folks in Sunnyside, Cashmere Garden, Fifth Ward, Pleasantville, who can do studies, interpret the data, do the mapping, do the community monitoring, do the science. And again, so it's not all housed at TSU. No, we have to do it in the community. And once we get communities ready and organized and mobilized, that's empowering. And when they say, oh, a permit's going to be granted for this area, they're there before they're even permit to be thought about. In other words, you have to be ahead of the curve and not wait until something's in the paper saying, oh, that's a public hearing on this committee. You have to be ready for it. That means that we have to have good relations with our community partners. And in some cases, I've had community partners from when I was in Atlanta back in the 90s. That's over 30-something years ago. Those partnerships have outlasted marriages. Well, it outlasted mine. So, but anyway, I shouldn't have said that. But anyway, yeah, we have to educate folks and then let them fly. You know, organizers know how to organize. And I'm a damn good teacher. I love teaching. And I love writing. I love doing research. And my thing, we have to follow your passion. If you have a passion for something, but your mom say, oh, you need to be an economist. Mama, I want to be an artist. Artists won't pay the bills. Well, you do your economist and then follow your passion, and then you can be a good artist, and then you can put the calculator down. Follow your passion. Not saying don't obey your parents, but follow your passion, and you'll end up, you know, getting the awards, getting the honors. I never thought I'd be, you know, in my school, I'm from South Alabama. I went to all-black elementary, middle, high school, and we didn't have a library. I mean, we couldn't go to the library, and our library was at our school, all-black school. I had great teachers. Some of them had PhDs, master's degrees, because they couldn't work.
Teaching you well.
Yep. And my parents bought encyclopedias, Encyclopedia Britannica.
Yeah.
I think I may have read every volume. 2 years ago, I found out I'm in it. Now, you understand what that is? What I just said? You follow your passion. And like last year, I was inducted to the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. That was, what's his name, Benjamin Franklin and all them people. We went up there. I never thought about it. But that's what you do. You follow your passion, and the awards will come. The recognition will come. You don't do it for the awards. You do it because that's your passion, and you stick with it. And for me, it's very rewarding to see communities overcome and be victorious and celebrate. But we know they can't celebrate too long because some of these companies are like vampires and zombies. They come back, and they will suck our communities down.
They will. Next question. Okay. We got somebody in the back of the room that's got a booming voice. I got you.
Folks, we are at time, so we will take a few more questions, but I also want to respect everybody's commitment.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Senator McQueen. I'm a member of the Texas Organizing Project. So I want to give a quick comment and ask a question. So in December, our organization sent a delegation, a group of us to set with FEMA. We sat at the table with 5 other states. They awarded us, the state of Texas, $315 million for disaster relief. So when we get back to the city, when we had to go to the city hall, city council, and the mayor, their initiative didn't give any of that money for housing and unmet needs. So we had to go days for days, for like 2 weeks, to every city council meeting, and bring the people. We brought our people to testify. So we ended up at the end of the day getting $100 million, which is still short, but yet still we got $100 million. So that's the process. So now what we got to do is make sure they allocate that $100 million to the people that need it, like that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So appreciate that. Now my question is this. So far, have they spent out of the $2.5 billion, have they spent under $811 million so far on their projects?
Yeah, so that's on completed projects. So some projects have multiple stages.
Yeah.
So far, $1.5 billion has been spent, but a lot of those construction projects are still in the middle or haven't fully started yet. But a lot of that money's been done on studies and design work and getting the engineering plans ready.
So still have $1 billion left.
1 billion left, yeah. So, and the other thing is that there's been $2.5 billion of additional partnership funds raised. So through like FEMA, HUD,
Yeah.
GLO. So in total, there's another $3.5 billion to spend. And a lot of that money is accounted for and encumbered on projects. So there is a plan to get all that spent. As you saw on the previous slide, once all the $5 billion is spent, we'll still need another $450 million to get other critical projects done.
After 5 million.
After the $5 billion,
Billion.
so we'll need another $450 million. So, hope that helps.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, sir. My name is Benjamin Brown.
Stand up.
Stand up. Oh, I can't see. Okay.
Okay.
Yes, and I have 2 questions for you about that part that you were saying that the zombies and the vampires come back. You know, if we clean up our communities and we get them looking nice and the air quality is great, the water's clean, but then they have this wonderful word called regentrification. Then they raise up our taxes and things of that nature. Now, that is one question. The second question is for Mr. Rodney Ellis's office, is that when they say that they have shovel-ready projects, they got us on the toll road, they got us on the flood bond money, they got us on the federal money. How can we work with your office to help us get some of that money? Because like on your dashboard you just showed, we have high dollar projects, yeah, because they had no choice to do those projects, because it was right during the Army. Now my question is, what about all of the other little projects that got looked over?
So what we're going to do is, the way we're going to prioritize any additional funding that is there from this project, it'll go to the higher scoring projects for the prioritization framework. So, for example, I think I have paused. Yeah. So for these paused projects, if we get extra money, so right now all the quartile 1 projects are going to be done. So those have the highest equity scores. So those are getting done. Now after that, this is the next batch of projects that needs to get done. And we're going to prioritize them as to what are the highest scoring second quartile projects. And that'll be the list, but it'll be all the precincts communicating with each other and talking to each other, and getting Commissioner's Court to approve what we're going to do next. Now, unfortunately, there were a lot of projects done, as you know, before this enforcement of the prioritization framework that were shovel ready, but were maybe in the 3rd or 4th quartile. But at the time, the thinking was, well, it's ready to go, we gotta spend money, right?
Yeah.
And I wasn't there, and I don't wanna cast shade on the folks before, but
Yeah.
essentially the prioritization framework should have been followed,
Yeah,
and I don't think it was.
no.
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't.
He has to be politically correct.
Yeah,
It was
I'm on
not
camera,
followed.
But, yeah. No, I mean, it wasn't followed, and I know traditionally, in the past, it was an equal distribution of funding, but when the bond was passed, it was specifically said, hey, we're gonna do equity, we're not, and
Yes.
flooding knows no precinct boundaries. So, that's the goal going forward, and advocating for that. Billy? Sorry, you had a question?
Yeah,
This will be
this is the last question, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, here's coming.
Sorry, save the best for last. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Billy Jacob Varn, Northeast Tax Collective, and also I sit on the Harris County Flood Resiliency Task Force. I've often had a concern that being on the task force, how much of our recommendations do the commissioners actually take? Okay, I just heard about, I'm familiar with the prioritization framework. I'm also familiar with the equity framework as well. But my question is, with Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, do you think it's being fair when they allow things like oil refineries and other pollutants, factories that commit pollutants? Do you think TCEQ is a little lax on? Okay, that was my question.
Yeah, so much for that question. All right, we're gonna close it out. Yeah, go ahead, Doctor.
TCEQ has not done what its mission is designed to do, protect the environment and public health. And it seems that they have not met a permit that they didn't like. One.
Concrete batches.
Concrete batchment. Yeah. So hallelujah. So it's we can't look to TCEQ for salvation, and it means that we still must resist, and that's all I know to advise, and keep working. Thank you.
All right, we're going to close out this program. I want to thank Commissioner Rodney Ellis for hosting this event. I want to thank the great staff of Commissioner Ellis for giving us the information, Nisha, Jaisel, and De Leon. I want to thank Dr. Bullock for providing us with all the resources and the data. Can I hear a round of applause for him? And I want to thank each and every one of you for coming to this event, who cared enough to be able to take time out of your busy night to want to make a change, to empower yourself with the information. I invite you to pick up the Defender. I got to do my commercial. Houston's leading Black information source. We continue to try to share that information. And with that, I wish all of you safe travel and go with God.
You're here. Very good. Oh.
Do you have a card?
Yeah.
I can, because I really want to get those metrics, you know, like how can we do it, and what's like a matrix or a framework for like health, air quality, green
Yes.
space.
Yeah. If we can help.
Yeah.
Yeah. How you doing? How you doing?
Professional that works in environmental and water resources engineer.
Oh, okay.
I was going to ask a question about how we can merge the technology of engineering with the sociology.
Well, the engineers are very good,
Yeah.
and especially a lot of the civil engineers and some of the other engineers. As a matter of fact, Dr. Erthia Nance, she's a colleague. She was over EPA Region 6, but now she's, well, anyway, yeah, she's an engineer, so we work together.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So is there any need around with the Thurgood Marshall or the Bullitt Institute and engineering solutions?
Well, we'd love.
The work that you guys are doing?
Oh, yeah.
To help facilitate conversations, especially around community-based public-private partnerships, flood mitigation, as well as safety.
Yes. Yeah. As I say, we had that 156.
And also part of Leadership Houston, so that's a part of our Clean and Green program.
Yeah. Okay. No. We do all of that. We work with engineers, toxicologists, hydrologists, social workers. We work with all of them because we got communities that need all kinds of things. How you know that?
I'll email you so you have my email address, but then Myron Jones, if you can say, email him, I think he was on one of the slides. Okay.
1972.
So I emailed
Long
him
time
and
ago.
say we would like flood emergency preparedness.
You did?
because They have a whole
What year?
team that can do that outreach and
Oh,
education
okay.
as well.
Yeah, I graduated 72.
And then, I'd be happy.
Atlanta University did.
I emailed that person.
Yes.
So that way I can help you. Then there's
Okay.
and then share the information of the event. It's like
Okay.
it's lunch is provided. So you can, come and I appreciate it Tuesday. Lunch.
We could maybe put it on our website or something. So I will email you, and then just email me, and then I'll get in touch with the comms team so that we can like promote it or something. Okay. Yeah. All right.
Also invite
Yes, that'd be great. Yeah. All right. Good to meet you. Yes.